Assalamu alaikum, I'm Aisha and you're watching Samaa News. Here are today's headlines. A heated disagreement reportedly broke out between US President Donald Trump and Republican senators over the Iran conflict, as the US Senate later voted to block a resolution aimed at limiting presidential war powers. The late-night measure failed after several Republican lawmakers changed their positions and voted against the proposal. Reports indicate the debate intensified following a closed-door lunch meeting between Trump and Republican senators. The developments underscore continuing divisions in Washington over the administration's handling of the conflict with Iran and congressional oversight of military action. At least 164 people have been killed and 971 others injured after two powerful earthquakes struck Venezuela, triggering widespread destruction and massive rescue operations across the country. Authorities say the 7.2 and 7.5 magnitude earthquakes were among the strongest to hit Venezuela in more than a century, with tremors felt across the wider region. Acting President Delcy Rodriguez said the confirmed death toll and warned that the figures could increase further as emergency crews continue search and rescue operations in the worst affected areas. The USGS's pager system estimates a 39% probability that fatalities will range between 1,000 and 10,000 people, while there is a 37% chance the death toll could reach between 10,000 and 100,000. On the other hand, a magnitude 6.9 earthquake has struck off Japan's northeast coast, injuring at least 6 people and forcing authorities to halt trains and inspect roads, while no tsunami warning was issued. Strong shaking was reported across parts of northern Japan and mild tremors felt in Tokyo. The Japan Meteorological Agency said the earthquake's epicenter was off Iwate Prefecture, and no tsunami damage was expected, apart from possible slight sea level changes. At a press conference, JMA officials warned residents in the most affected areas to stay alert for future earthquakes for up to a week. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has announced that technical-level negotiations between the United States and Iran will resume in Switzerland next week, as both sides work toward implementing the recently signed Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding. The talks are part of a 60-day diplomatic process aimed at reaching a comprehensive agreement on Iran's nuclear program, sanctions relief, and the implementation of the post-war framework. Speaking to reporters during an official visit to Kuwait, Rubio said the technical group is expected to meet again on June 29th or 30th. He explained that the negotiations would take place at the staff level and include officials from the US State Department, the Department of Energy, and other government agencies. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has assured Gulf allies that any future agreement with Iran will take their interests into account and will not undermine the security or prosperity of Washington's long-standing partners in the region. Speaking at a meeting of Gulf Arab foreign ministers and officials in Bahrain, Rubio said the United States is ready for lasting peace in the region, but remains committed to protecting its allies. He said the Strait of Hormuz is an international waterway and no country has the right to impose tolls or fees on vessels passing through it. He added that it will never be an acceptable condition of any deal.
Iran has pushed back against criticism from US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, accusing Washington of being the main source of instability in the Middle East. Foreign Ministry spokesman Esmail Baghaei said that American intervention and support for Israel continue to fuel conflict across the region. He was responding to US Secretary of State Marco Rubio's comment a day earlier that peace and stability in the Middle East cannot be achieved while Iran-backed groups continue launching attacks. Iran has made it clear that it has no plans to allow UN nuclear watchdog Chief Rafael Grossi to inspect nuclear facilities damaged during the war. Deputy Foreign Minister Kazem Karibabadi said that any decision on inspections will only be discussed in a final agreement and after sanctions are lifted.
NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte has sought to calm tensions with President Donald Trump at the White House, using a mix of flattery and gentle pushback to argue that instances of allies' reluctance to support the US war with Iran were limited to isolated cases. During the Oval Office meeting, Rutte used cardboard charts to show how much NATO countries have stepped up their defense spending since Trump first came into office in 2017. He also said thousands of US planes had taken off from bases in Europe during the war, pointing to that cooperation as a sign of the Allies' support. Apple has increased prices for its MacBook and iPad lineup, citing rising costs of memory and storage chips driven by growing demand from the artificial intelligence industry. The company said the price hike will not affect iPhones, its biggest selling product. However, the entry-level Neo laptop will see its starting price rise from $599 to $699 just months after launch. The move highlights the impact of increasing semiconductor costs on the global consumer electronics market. That's all for now. For more updates, visit www.samaa.tv. Thank you for watching Samaa News.